Welcome back to The Farm Show here on Westplex Talk 1045. I'm your host, John Combest, and we have a first today. We have the first two-time guest on The Farm Show. You know, we've had this gentleman on the Brad and John Show here on Westplex Talk from 7 to 8 a.m. weekdays, and we've hosted our next guest before, and we even had this gentleman on the very first edition of The Farm Show all the way back in July. I want to welcome to the show campaign manager and advocate, activist, even lobbyist, Eapen Thampy. Eapen, welcome back.
Always great to be here, John.
Well, this week at the state capitol, you managed to do something unheard of, which is in a really hectic week for policy and legislators in the state of Missouri, you happened to steal the show earlier in the week with news of a ballot initiative that you had indicated would be coming, but you managed to steal the show and steal some headlines with this. And it has to do with marijuana, cannabis broadly, even hemp. Eapen, can you tell us what passed in the state of Missouri in 2022? There was a statewide marijuana initiative. Can you tell us what passed, what some of the problems are with that constitutional amendment, and how what you're working on now addresses those problems?
Yeah, so in 2022, a ballot initiative was passed by 52% of the voters, basically, which created kind of a quasi recreational legal system. And I call it quasi because, like, the true believers like me who believe in legalization of marijuana and all cannabis, we're not very happy. And the reason why we weren't happy was there's like two or three reasons, really. But number one, the proposal that passed created a licensing monopoly in the state constitution. So, you know, this whole ballot initiative really preserved an economic cartel that doesn't want to see new entrants into the market, or at least new competitive entrants. There's other issues like they maintained criminal penalties for possession. You know, what we call legalization in Missouri is you could really only possess up to about 3 ounces, and we still have statutory felony penalties. So individuals with more than 6 ounces could be charged and prosecuted for felony marijuana possession, which, you know, we would argue is against the entire point of legalization. You know, kind of by a counterpoint, I could legally buy, you know, 15 kegs of beer and fit them in a truck and drive down the highway and do whatever I want with them, you know. We don't see a reason to restrict adults from possession of a legal item of personal property. And there's other issues. You know, the current 41 pages in the Missouri Constitution primarily consist of definitions and regulations, which shouldn't be in a constitution. They should be in statute. That's hurt some of the business that were created under this proposal. You know, I talked to a gentleman specifically who had 6 months. State took 6 months to approve his labels, his package labels. You know, there was no way you can run a business like that when, you know, a regulatory hang-up puts you waiting to do anything for half a year. Long and short, we want to remove all the regulatory stuff from the Constitution, mandate the Missouri General Assembly with doing their jobs in regulating this category, you know, benchmark those regulations to how we handle alcohol and tobacco, which are adult use products that the society is very familiar with.
I saw in some of the coverage, so for example, Rebecca Rivas had a piece where she talked a little bit about comparing the regulation of it to alcohol and tobacco. Can you go a little bit more into that? And the reason specifically I want to drill down in the fact that I've seen in the last couple years, folks who oppose hemp consumables or that get into Delta 8 have pointed to the fact that some convenience stores sell these products. And, let's be honest, if you want to get 80% of people on your side, you say that kids are being harmed and that kids are
Right.
purchasing these. Can you tell us a little bit about when you say that these products would be regulated the way that alcohol and tobacco are? Is that something that should give some reassurances to people who aren't too sure about everything that goes on here?
Yeah, in the state of Missouri, anytime you purchase a alcohol or tobacco product, you have to show an ID. Typically, it's an age-gated establishment or at least an age-gated section of a store that you have to go to. There's restrictions on packaging and labeling. Certain things can't be on a label because they're attractive to kids and so forth. Those are the very same common sense structure that we want to bring to what we would call, I guess, a hemp consumable, which hemp is a federally legal classification of cannabis that has, the market has done what the market's done, in terms of innovation and bringing products to market. And, it's true. I don't think people realized 6, 7 years ago, there was legal THC products you can manufacture out of hemp, but that in fact is the case.
You've explained before the difference between how the government classifies marijuana versus a hemp product. And most of the folks who listen to the show have, a pretty good background in agriculture, but they might not even understand the federal classification between those, the exact same plant classified as two different things. You do a great job of explaining that. Can you explain that again for us?
So in 1970, Congress enacted the Controlled Substances Act, which created this scheduling of drug products. So Schedule 1, which is where marijuana is today, is a complete prohibition. Whereas in 2018, President Trump signed the 2018 Farm Bill, which removed the hemp side of cannabis from federal scheduling. It is now completely unscheduled. And barring some regulations, there's a free market that you can grow your own hemp for fiber, seed, or consumable purposes. Um, it's a pretty hardy plant. You can grow it in almost any environment, depending on the genetics.
So, can you talk a little bit about what happened this week and how the initiative petition process works in Missouri?
So we've submitted 4 versions of a simple petition that we uh, would like to put in front of the voters. And the goal here is, again, regulate hemp and marijuana like alcohol and tobacco, protect a free market in those products. So we filed our petitions with the Secretary of State. There's some differences on the tax structure between each specific petition. And then aspect of beverage regulation, there's also a few differences, but nothing really substantive. Right now, the Secretary of State has those documents. His attorneys are in the process of reviewing them. They send them over to, I believe, the Attorney General. And after about a 50-day review process, they send it back to us and they say that this is approved for circulation, hopefully. Now, here is the tricky part. We have to collect about 180,000 valid signatures of registered voters. And that's tricky because that is a really, really tough job. We have to collect them from all over the state, from 6 out of Missouri's 8 congressional districts. It is a big job. It's logistically just incredibly difficult. So the difficulty in this campaign is we know a lot of voters want to support this idea. We should have a poll out here in the next week or two with some more information on that point. But the big issue with this kind of campaign is the expense. We probably have to raise in the neighborhood of $5 million just to assure that we get the signatures that we need. You have to assume an invalidity rate of 50-ish% typically, because voters will have forgotten, I live here, but I think I'm registered to vote at that address, or they may not be registered to vote. They may think that because they went to the DMV or did something with the government that they have automatic registration, which is not the case. There's a lot of reasons why you see signature invalidity from individuals, but regardless, you want to account for that and typically collect twice as many signatures as you need to be sure of success. And so that's where the challenge of this campaign is. We've got some significant commitments. American Shaman, which is one of Missouri's first hemp product companies, consumable hemp companies out of Kansas City, has committed $1 million to this campaign. So, if there's interest, if other companies or interests believe that this is the right way to go, hopefully we'll raise the money and get this in front of the voters in August or the November ballot, and kind of see how what we think is best, most advantageous or cheapest.
I see that, and this is something that even folks that follow politics on a week by week basis, if not a day by day basis, can be confused by. The reason why you need a statewide amendment for this is because when the original proposition passed, or when the original initiative passed in 2022, that became enshrined in the Constitution. So I imagine there's probably some of our listeners who say, well, why don't our state lawmakers just go in there and clean that language up? But it's not that simple, right?
Yeah, we face two obstacles in the legislature. The first is, just simply kind of the partisan gridlock on other issues. The second is, there's an entrenched industry interest group, in this case, the existing marijuana industry, that probably doesn't want to see more competition. So it is very hard, if not impossible, to get reasonable access to the legislature in terms of just getting something like this passed. And that's fine. That's why we have the ballot process.
Have you, when you look at other states, Eapen, I know that you have connections across the country and you keep a close eye on legislation in other states. Are there other states that do a good job of this? In other words, are there states in which you could model the Missouri model after those states?
This is actually, I would say, a first in the nation kind of proposal. The way that marijuana has been handled around the country has been on a state by state basis. So, what this has meant is that mostly in other states, it's been large interest groups, well funded interest groups, with usually with some kind of private equity backing, that come in, collect signatures, go to the constitutional ballot in that state, right? And all of these states everyone has their own ideas, but at the end of the day, it's typically been about access to the market. And so most states have implemented some kind of, very restrictive system, right? And so in terms of licensing and market access. So at the end of the day, we're kind of pioneering a new approach here. This is we're probably very close to President Trump ending the federal prohibition on marijuana. We're expecting him to move it down to federal Schedule 3, which will make marijuana federally legal by prescription, and allow for interstate commerce for the first time in 100 years. So we want to remove barriers in our current regulatory system from that federal classification, from allowing Missourians to participate in that federal classification. We have, again, this is a kind of an innovative system because, it's very common sense. These are adult use products. They should be treated like adult use products. We have a lot of experience with how to do that in alcohol and tobacco regulation. There's no need to reinvent the wheel, so to speak. But no other state has done this, is the bottom line.
Eben, if you can hang on with us, we're going to hold you over through the break. Can you stay with us for a few more minutes?
Sure.
You're listening to The Farm Show. That's Farm and Ranch, Missouri, here on Westplex Talk 104.5. We'll be right back after this.